The American Psychological Association sets the standard for APA format, but it isn't only used for psychology, but it's used for other subjects as well, such as education, and many of the sciences use APA format. One major difference between APA and MLA is that APA papers are split into subsections. So in an APA article, you'll see headings like abstract, introduction, method, results, discussion, conclusion, and so on. And you won't see that in an MLA paper. An MLA paper is just one big long essay without different sections, but APA is split into subsections. Another difference between APA and MLA is that APA has a title page, and I'll show you what that looks like. So instead of having the header up on the side of the page like in MLA format, APA will have its own title page. And this is where you put the title of your paper, your name, and then school affiliation. So you would put Cal Baptist University. So here's an excerpt from a journal article that's in APA format. So you notice how there are subsections where there's the introduction, and that's split from explicit instruction, which you would not see in an MLA style paper. Instead of a works cited page, APA format has a references page, and the format for each of the citations is a little bit different than MLA format. So in Little Seagull Handbook, you have an APA guide in there as well. And that starts on page 170. So that's another page you may want to put a sticky note in. For in-text citations, you'll want to mention the author's name and the year. So it's different from MLA where you're mentioning the author's last name and the page number. In APA, you'll be looking for the year of publication. So the example here is, quote, "The context surrounding a word is unlikely to provide adequate clues that would help students correctly guess the word's meaning," end quote. And in the citation there it says Zimmerman 2009. So you have the author's last name and then the year of when the article was published. And then depending on how the sentence is worded, another way to do an in-text citation is like in the second example. So it says, according to Zimmerman, 2009, so only the year is in the citation, the context surrounding the word, and so on. So for MLA format, think author's last name and page number. For APA, think author's last name and year. On the second bullet point, you have the basic format for the references page. Again, this is something you may want to write down as kind of a formula for future reference. So you've got the author's last name, and then instead of putting their entire first name, you just put the initial of their first name, and then the year of publication in parentheses, the article title and subtitle, the journal name, which is in italics, and then the journal number. Usually journals have a edition number, and then the page number. So there's an example on the bottom of all of that information plugged in and set up as an APA style citation. These are the subsections that you'll see and use in APA style papers, and you'll also see these in journal articles. There are more subsections than these depending on how long the article is, but this is the basic format of an APA style paper or journal article. So you'll see these subsections again and again when we start reading academic journal articles. And also when you write your final research essay, your essay should include all of these subsections as well. So I recommend writing these down in order and writing the description next to them, and it'll be a helpful future reference for when you start working on your final research project. The first section is the abstract, which is just a fancy way of saying a summary of the article or essay. Then there's the introduction, which introduces the topic and contains a literature review, contains a research question. So we'll go more into literature review and research question later on in more detail when we get closer to the final research essay. But for now, just trust me on that and write it down for now. Then there's the method subsection, which describes the research method. The results describes results of the study and portrays data. Discussion interprets the results in light of other research. And then the conclusion draws conclusions from the project. And this part is argumentative, or it contains the argument. So unlike in an MLA paper where you usually put your argument up at the top, like in the introduction, in APA style research articles, the argument is at the end, so in the conclusion, the discussion, and the first sections like the introduction, method, and results are usually more objective, just stating what the study is about. And then you can add other subsections depending on the project. So if you want to expand your introduction to have subsections to cover different topics, you can do that. But this is the basic format. And so I recommend pausing here and writing this down. Following the correct format for your essays isn't something that most people can just memorize because it's so specific and nitpicky. So you'll always want to have some kind of guide to look at. I put the link to the Purdue OWL website in an announcement on Blackboard a few days ago, and that's a really helpful resource for setting up your essays with correct format. So there's the website link there, owl.purdue.edu. I highly recommend bookmarking that website. It also really helps to look at visual examples. So you could look at page 119 and page 170 in Little Seagull to see examples of both formats and model your paper after those examples. Before you create your works cited or reference list, you'll need to find the information to plug into the citations. If you're citing a printed source like a book, you can usually find most of the information in the title page. If you're citing a website, there's some websites that list the citation straight on the site, which is really nice because then you can just copy and paste the citation onto your works cited page or reference page. And the library database does this, so sources that you find from the library databases will have the citations that you can copy and paste from there. And sometimes no matter how hard you look, you can't find certain information on a website, so maybe you've looked all over the website and you just can't find the year when it was published or something like that. In that case, you just leave that part out of the citation. Sometimes it can be confusing to know when to cite something or when not to cite something. Of course, whenever you're using a direct quote from a book or a website or an article, you'll want to include a citation, but sometimes it's not so clear-cut. General knowledge doesn't need to be cited. So something like Amazon is the most popular online shopping site. If you make a statement like that in your essay, you might think you need to find a source to back up your statement or something, but for something like that that's just general knowledge, there's no need to include a citation for that. On the other hand, specific knowledge should be cited. So something like Amazon captured 43.5% of the online retailing market. Obviously, that's not something that someone can know right off the top of their head. That percentage had to come from somewhere, so in that case, you should put in your citation of the source where you got that information from. It can also be confusing to know how many citations should be in an essay and how often there should be a citation. As a general rule, it's good to use at least one outside source for each body paragraph, at least in MLA format. APA papers might use a lot more than that. So you tend to see tons of citations in APA papers, but in MLA, one or two sources per paragraph is the norm. All right, so that covers the basics of APA and MLA format. And I realize it takes time to get used to them, and probably no one will get it exactly right the first time, and that's okay. But just know that there are resources. There's Little Seagull, there's Owl Purdue website. There is Not Easy Bib, that doesn't count as a resource. But as long as you follow those examples, you should be fine. And although formatting is important, it's not the most important emphasis of this class or anything. I'm much more concerned about you guys creating strong arguments and creating well-developed essays than having perfect formatting. But it is a fact of life while you're in college, and the sooner you get the hang of it, the better, because every discipline has its own preferences for what kind of formatting style they use, and it's just part of the process. And you might even be wondering, why does this stuff matter so much? And well, to be honest, I've wondered the same thing myself, but I think formatting is just kind of like, when you go to a fancy dinner party and you wear a suit and tie, it's just a way to present yourself, and that's the idea behind having correct formatting in your paper. It just makes your paper presentable in a formal academic context.